Hey, have you ever looked at a piece of land and just thought, I have no idea how to show people what this place actually is? Yeah, that's what we're talking about today. Welcome back to the Land Buyer's Guide. I'm your host, Scott Thomas, founder of landparker.com, where we help everyday people get into rural land ownership without breaking the bank. And today we're getting into something that I think is genuinely useful. Whether you own land already or you're thinking about buying, drone photography for vacant land. Now I know that might sound a little niche, but stick with me here. Because if you've ever tried to take a regular ground level photo of an empty piece of land, you already know the problem. It's just trees or dirt or grass. It doesn't tell a story. And land, real rural land, has a story. Drone footage is how you tell it. So let's get into it. First thing, and this is honestly the stuff most people skip, know the rules before you fly. In the US, the FAA regulates drone use, and it's not super complicated once you understand the basics. If your drone weighs more than about half a pound, which most consumer drones do, you need to register it with the FAA. It's not expensive and it's pretty straightforward to do online. There's also a general guideline around flying below 400 feet if you're a recreational flyer. And if you're near an airport or any kind of restricted airspace, you'll want to check before you go up. There are free apps for this. B4UFLY and AirMap are two good ones. You just punch in your location and it tells you if there are any restrictions. Takes maybe 2 minutes. One more thing on this. If you're using drone footage to sell your land, that technically falls under commercial use. And for that, the FAA wants you to have what's called a Part 107 remote pilot certificate. So just keep that in mind. We'll come back to that in a bit. Okay, so you've got your drone, you know it's legal to fly where you are. Now let's talk about timing, because this makes a massive difference. The best light for aerial photos is what photographers call the golden hour. That's the first hour after sunrise and the last hour before sunset. The light is warm, it's softer, and it just makes everything look better. Midday sun is harsh. It washes out colors and creates these dark, unflattering shadows that can actually hide the natural features of your land. Seasons matter too, especially with rural and wooded properties. Spring and early fall give you that lush green look without the thick summer canopy that can cover up everything interesting on the ground below. But here's what a lot of people don't realize. Late fall and winter are actually great times to shoot land. When the leaves are gone, you can see the shape of the land so much more clearly. Drainage patterns, terrain changes, natural clearings, all of that becomes visible when the trees are bare. Oh, and if there's been recent rain, get out there. Creeks and seasonal ponds show up beautifully after rainfall, and that kind of water feature can be a huge selling point. Now, before you even launch the drone, it's worth spending a few minutes on the ground walking the property. Just think about what someone looking at your land for the first time would want to see. Where does the road come in? Is there a natural flat spot that might work as a building site? Is there a ridge, a pond, a clearing that makes this piece special? Once you've got that in your head, you can plan your shots with purpose. You'll want at least one high altitude overview, something that shows the full parcel and how it sits in relation to the surrounding area. Then come down lower for the interesting stuff. Road access is huge for buyers, so make sure you capture that clearly. Any water features, clearings, or interesting terrain changes, those deserve their own pass. Using Google Earth or your county's GIS map beforehand is a solid move. You can see where the property lines fall and plan your flight path so you're not guessing up in the air. Let's talk camera settings for a second. If you're using a modern consumer drone, something like a DJI Mini or one of the Air series, you're already working with pretty solid hardware. These things produce great footage without a ton of manual tweaking. But a few things are worth paying attention to. Shoot in the highest resolution your drone offers. If it can shoot in RAW format for photos, use it. Gives you a lot more flexibility when you're editing later. For video, 24 frames per second has that cinematic feel, while 30 frames per second looks a bit cleaner and more natural. Either works for land content, honestly. And if you can set a manual white balance instead of leaving it on auto, your colors will look more consistent and natural throughout. One of the biggest things that separates decent drone footage from really good drone footage is how you actually move the drone. New pilots tend to move fast. It feels exciting, you want to cover ground. But fast, jerky movements just make it hard to watch and harder to read the land visually. Slow it down. Deliberate, smooth movements look way more professional, and they actually give the viewer time to absorb what they're seeing. A few moves that work really well for vacant land. The orbit shot is one of my favorites. You pick a central feature, like a pond or a potential building site, and you fly a slow circle around it while keeping the camera pointed at it the whole time. It shows depth and context in a way that's really compelling. Then there's the reveal shot. You start low and close to the ground, then slowly rise up and pull back to show the full property. Done right, those are genuinely dramatic. And a simple tracking shot, just flying slowly along a fence line or a creek, does a great job of showing scale and length of a feature. When you're done flying, don't just dump the raw footage straight onto a listing or share it without any editing. Even basic touch-ups make a big difference. You don't need expensive software. Google Photos, Lightroom Mobile, DaVinci Resolve, those are all free and they work. Check your horizon line because it's really easy for it to come out slightly tilted. Boost the contrast and clarity a little to make the terrain pop. Trim your video clips so you're cutting out the shaky start when you launch and the wobble when you land. A clean, well-edited image just communicates that you take your property seriously. And buyers pick up on that, even if they don't consciously realize it. Now, if you're planning to list your land for sale and it's a larger or more complex parcel, it might genuinely be worth bringing in a professional drone photographer, someone who's already got their Part 107 certification and knows how to get commercial-grade footage. Many real estate photographers offer land-specific packages, and the cost is often pretty reasonable. And the return on that investment, faster interest, more engagement online, it tends to pay for itself. Here's the big takeaway from all of this. Vacant land is hard to sell, hard to document, and honestly hard to appreciate from the ground. Aerial photography solves all of that. It gives people the full picture, literally. It shows them where the land sits, what it looks like from above, what the terrain is doing, where the access is, what's nearby. For someone who's dreaming about building a cabin or living off-grid, a good drone video can be the thing that takes them from casually browsing to genuinely interested. And for buyers doing their research, because a lot of our listeners are buyers, pay attention to listings that have drone footage. It tells you so much more than ground photos ever could. If a seller has put in the effort to shoot good aerial footage, that usually says something about how they operate and how they've cared for the property. All right, that's going to do it for today. If you found this helpful and you're in the market for rural land, whether you're looking for a homestead, an off-grid retreat, or just a piece of land to call your own, head over to landparker.com. We specialize in discounted rural vacant land with owner financing that's actually affordable. We're talking as low as $100 down and $100 a month. No bank required. Just go to landparker.com, take a look at what we've got available, and see if something speaks to you. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.